Sports Avenue Twisted Podcast. Rob and Rocky talks everything sports.
Welcome to another edition of the Sports Avenue Twisted Podcast. And we have another yearly tradition of previewing the Bills since Rob and I are diehard Bills fans. And we got a guest in here today. And this is the first time he's been around in our Sports Avenue Twisted Podcast. And we welcome the beat writer for Bills on SI, John Brady. Welcome. It's an honor for you to have on, and we're pretty excited to have you on. So welcome.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. When you reached out, I was very excited. So I'm glad we can make it work. Glad to talk some ball.
Yeah, we're always excited to talk Bills, and we thank you for coming on, man. So we appreciate it. Thanks.
Of course, no problem at all.
All right, let's get this started here. Let's talk about this team here. And there's been a shakeup in the offseason, right, after that devastating loss to the Denver Broncos this past year. And the Bills fired McDermott. Pretty much did clean slate with the whole coaching staff, and they promoted Joe Brady as the head coach of this team. And there were some mixed reactions, but I was kind of in it. I think it was the right hire, but I want to hear your thoughts on what you thought about this coaching staff hiring Pete Carmichael as the OC, Jim Leonard as the DC, and Pat Mayer as the O-line coach.
Like you said, yeah, it was quite the shakeup. Not something that I necessarily thought was going to happen. I mean, maybe a little bit I could understand, right? Emotions kind of boil over and get the best of us sometimes. And I think maybe that happened a little bit to Terry Pegula, but ultimately you got to live with what the decision you make. And we were riding with it now and seeing the fruits of the labor of the offseason so far. It's been good in the 2 preseason games that Joe Brady's had. And I'm excited to see him in his first year. Did I think it was the right hire? I don't know. I would have liked maybe to see, they did have quite the extensive outside search, I guess, but I still feel like maybe it was him all along. So that's we talked off screen. I kind of feel like maybe it's like 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out. Like they did make a sweeping change on the defensive side of the ball with Jim Leonard. And yes, they brought in Pete Carmichael, but he is, a little bit of a Joe Brady tree, a little bit. Joe Brady's a part of that tree. They have this New Orleans Saints connection. So it's a little bit, yes, he can have his say, but it's still going to be Joe Brady's show. You know what I mean? And then Pat Mayer, he does have a little bit of a connection with Aaron Cromer. They're coming from a similar tree. I know they've talked about they speak the similar language. I know Osiris Torrance, who maybe we'll talk about later, and Spencer Brown and Dion, they all kind of said he speaks a similar language to Cromer. So maybe it's not as big of a change as we may think. I do think things that Osiris Torrance said is he maybe allows them to be a little bit more free in what they do versus some of the younger guys. He kind of lets them do what they do because he knows that, they speak the same language that he does. So we'll see how much of a switch up or how much of a help that is. I know that's kind of a big loss to have Cromer gone, but he's retired and no fault to him. You walk off into the sunset. I can't blame him there. And I am very excited to see Jim Leonard, though. 21 points, I believe it is, through 2 games. And that's been pretty good to see, and especially with even some backups and some guys fighting for roster spots, producing pretty well. So it's definitely been a big change, but I think sometimes change is a good thing. And we'll see how it shakes out in the regular season. But definitely so far so good, I guess. Yeah.
Like you mentioned, they hired Jim Leonard as their defensive coordinator. He comes from Denver, working under Vance Joseph, and they ultimately moved from Sean McDermott's 4-3 defense to a 3-4 base defense under Leonard. So, what are you expecting this defense to look like with some of the other extra personnel they brought in and the changes they've made?
I know, like I said, like we were talking off screen, we talked about, Bradley Chubb and such, and this is a defense that maybe not the specific, Leonard's going to have his own spin on things, but this is something that he's very familiar with. He was in Denver, under Vance Joseph. So I'm sure they're like just with Mayer and Cromer on the defensive side of the ball, they probably speak a similar language. So it's an easy transition there. And then you still got some of the young guys from last year, like Landon Jackson and TJ Sanders. We'll see how they fit into this defense. Supposedly, it's supposed to be a better fit. I'm a little iffy on TJ so far. I don't think he's been producing to the level a second round pick should. And then you have Landon Jackson coming off quite a significant injury, and he's so far, in my opinion, outperformed him this offseason. And I wouldn't be shocked if I know there'll be a little bit of a rotation, but he'll be the quote unquote starter alongside Ed Oliver and Deion Walker. So that's kind of been a surprising development to see. But Landon Jackson did play in a similar defense at Arkansas at this weight. So he actually said that he felt out of place at a smaller weight last year at McDermott, and then the injury happened. So, I mean, who the heck knows what would have happened. But he says he feels more comfortable in this, so I'm excited to see him. So it's not really a new addition, but it is kind of because he didn't really play much last year. Then you have players like D. Alford. I'm excited to see him in the nickel. It's a totally different player than Taron Johnson, who's now over with the Las Vegas Raiders. Johnson liked to bang in the run game a little bit, and Alford admittedly says he does not like to do that, and Leonard's going to put him in the position to not do that. He's going to be a cover guy, and that's what I like about Leonard. He, a player himself, 10 years in the league, he seems to not try to put, a square peg in a round hole. He understands that you got to work to a player's strengths. And as much as maybe McDermott would say that, I do believe that he had certain roles that he wanted people to fill, and regardless if they were good at it or not, they were going to, they were going to do it. And that was some of the squabble last year, I think, with the roster construction. Did I lose you guys for a second? Sorry there. So, like I said, maybe that was kind of the squabble with him and Bean. Roster construction wise, he didn't feel that he had the players that were to fit into those roles. Yet Brandon Bean and apparently Terry Pagula thinks that they had the roster to achieve what they needed to achieve. So that's an interesting thing to see this upcoming season is how does Leonard, fit his scheme to the players versus trying to fit the players into certain roles that maybe they don't necessarily, do well in. So I am excited to see that. And then CJ Gardner-Johnson, boy, we've heard a lot from him. We haven't seen much from him yet this offseason. He'll talk every week, but I believe it's all the way I think it's all the way back in since Pittsburgh that he hasn't, been on the field. So just the other day, they were asking him if he was concerned about the time missed, and he said no. And we'll see. Like I said, he likes to talk a big talk. And Houston's a big game for him returning back there. You know what I mean? So I'm excited to see that. And we'll see there. And then some of the rookies, I'm excited to see them as well on the defensive side. TJ Parker, we'll see how he does rotating in there. Davis and Igbinosun. Max Harrison's been iffy this so far, and he's really been out most of the time. So, and it's been Davis and IGB, Igbinosun in there. So that'll be interesting to see if he has a lot of experience starting in college. And Max was hurt in college too. So that's a big competition. I believe Max is the starter, but if he slips or gets hurt, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of still question marks to, be answered. But like I said, just overall, like I said, so far so good. And especially on the defensive side of the ball, it's been exciting. And I can see why fans are excited for it. But preseason is a different animal than regular season. So that's all I'll say there.
Well, let me talk about the new additions here because we talked about guys that they've been added outside the organization. You already mentioned the names, right? Because we talked about last year getting a guy like Joey Bosa that did not work out at all. So you get Bradley Chubb. So that seems like it's supplanted there, and it's all the dependability of how they're building it. How do you look at the additions right now, like, and where they're at? Because D. Alford's having a good camp as well, right? As a nickel. So like, talk about a bit about that and how much they could impact compared to last year's defense. What was provided?
Yeah, so like we said, it's pretty interesting they brought up Bosa. He actually decided that he was done after that. I bet you if the Bills would have offered him, he would have returned to Buffalo, but I don't think there was a lot left in the tank there, clearly. On the other hand, with Bradley Chubb, when he hasn't been hurt the past couple of years, which was an issue with Bosa, but he didn't produce to the level that Bradley Chubb did. So maybe there still is more left in the tank there. And, I believe he's only just turned 30, similar to Bosa. But he seems a little bit more fresher. We'll see. Like I said, the proof's in the pudding, so we'll see in the regular season. D. Alford, I am excited to see him. He played quite well. I wrote a story about him earlier in the spring, how he came from a little Tuscaloosa in Tennessee, Tuscaloosa College. You probably never heard of it. A very, very tiny school. And then he had to go and play at the CFL because it was during COVID. He didn't really get much in front of scouts or anything. And then he went and played in the CFL. I believe it was with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I believe. Is that who it was? And he played quite well. And I believe he won a CFL title too, if I'm not mistaken. And then he ended up going to play with Atlanta, which is actually, he's from Georgia. So that's pretty interesting. And then he kind of grew from there. He's a little bit older of a player because of all of that. But I think he hasn't had the rigors of the NFL game as long as some other people. So I think he's still fresh as well, similar to Chubb. We'll see. I am interested with the development of Jordan Hancock. If maybe this is a 1-year rental for Alford and then they cut bait after. But, we'll have to see how it goes. But because Hancock's kind of mirroring at both positions, safety and nickel, and he's younger as well. And he was quite productive at Ohio State when he was there. So that'll be interesting to see. And I'm also interested in one of a recent addition, Greg Gaines. I believe he's going to make the team, to be honest. Just reading through the tea leaves and the words that he says, it makes me feel like they've assured him that he's going to be on this roster. What does that mean for a player like Dwayne Carter? I have no idea. We shall see. But he's been in the league for 7 years. This is his 8th year, has plenty of experience. Von Miller, when he was here in Buffalo, he talked wonders of him. He talked, said he was a great player. He was one of the players. He mentioned him along with Aaron Donald. That's high praise. Not necessarily saying he was that type of player, but that locker room presence and that type of role player on a team that's needed. Gaines is that type of player, and he was waiting around for an opportunity. And Michael Hoyt was a player that actually kind of was recruiting him a little bit and got him to come because they were also on that Rams team together that won that Super Bowl. So he's a player that I'm interested to see. He played pretty well in his debut against Cleveland in the limited snaps that he had. He's actually rocking Bosa's 97, if I'm not mistaken. So that's funny there. So I think, some of these guys are going to have a big impact. It's been a complete 180 or almost 360 on that side of the ball. There aren't too many changes on the offensive side of the ball, really, other than maybe, a little sprinkle here or there with players like a rookie Skylar Bell, if he ever gets back on the field, hopefully, and things like that. But I do think that they're going to be effective. I think they're fresher than some of the additions that maybe they brought in the past. So we'll see. Week 1 will tell not the whole story because sometimes that's a liar. We'll have to wait till, week 5 or 6 before we'll really know for sure. But and it's a little bit of a tough schedule there to start things off. But so that will tell a lot for sure. But I think that they have the possibility of making a definite big impact. But it might only be because there's nobody else. They brought in a whole new regime on that side of the ball. They brought in a whole group of players, so it's going to be them or nobody. You know what I mean? So we'll see. It's going to be sink or swim, and it should be interesting. I think Leonard can right the ship. I am interested to see if he's up in the booth or down on the sidelines. It seems like he wants to be on the sidelines. That's where he's always been. Versus, I think Carmichael might be up on the top to be more of a service, an aerial view for Joe Brady. And Leonard seems to like to look his players in the eyes and be able to see how they react. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm excited. This preseason game against the Pittsburgh Steelers might not tell a lot other than people fighting for roster battles. But then there's a little bit of a layoff. But when they get down in Houston and the bullets start flying for real, then that's when we'll start seeing what this team is made of and what this coaching staff is made of.
It's funny you mentioned 2 players in Michael Hoyt and Dwayne Carter, and they both had unfortunate ends to their season last year with Achilles injuries, and how big is it for them to be like if they come and they be their factors? Like they both played pretty well when they were in last
Mm-hmm.
year, so
Mm-hmm.
their season ended
Mm-hmm.
abruptly. But how big would it be for this team if both them guys can come back and contribute at a high level?
Yeah, I'll start with Hoyt because I am a little bit iffy on Carter's roster status. Not that he hasn't been playing decent this summer. I just don't necessarily know if there's a ton of room for him. But I will start. Maybe Federian Mathis' suspension might have something to do with that. Maybe he is safe for a little while. But anyways, with Hoyt, he played some of the best. The 7 quarters that he played was some of the best ball we saw from anybody on the Bills last season, and he is a try-hard player. He is very effective at playing his role. People play off him well, it seems like, and he can, orchestrate things up front and get guys in the right position. I think he's very smart. Brown, I believe, is where he went to school. So, an Ivy League guy. They say he's pretty much like a coach in, the meetings and on the field. So when they do finally set him free. We'll see if he plays against Pittsburgh or not. I probably highly doubt that, just to be safe. But against Houston, I am excited to see how effective he is. Like I said, in those games against Carolina and Kansas City that he did play for a little bit, he was phenomenal. So, you can't fault the player for being injured. It is a little bit unfortunate, especially after the 6-game suspension that he dealt with the PEDs. Also, maybe you can't fault him for that if you didn't know what was happening, but he did take full responsibility for that. So I think he could be a big factor. And if he stays healthy, who knows? I could see 6 or 7 sacks, maybe even a few more from him. I mean, that's pretty lofty, but he was on a tear in those 7 quarters and he was being effective. And I think he might be hitting his stride if he's able to come back fully from that Achilles. But from all the reports, he looks good. He looks fresh, and people are surprised how he looks coming off so quickly from it. So we'll see. That's exciting for sure. As far as Carter, like I said, I am a little bit leery if he's going to make the team or not. Incredible locker room presence for sure. He was a captain at Duke. That's one of the reasons they brought him in. I think he may have been a better fit for a Sean McDermott defense, but that's why he bulked up when he was injured last year. Unfortunately, he also had an unfortunate injury, I was saying, right before the regular season. So what did he do? He just decided to go in the weight room. Him and Landon Jackson, while they were injured, they both worked out together all the time, and they both bulked up. And just so happened they switched the defense, and he ended up being around 330 pounds. He did play well against Cleveland in the second preseason game, and Leonard even alluded to that in his press conference. He mentioned him specifically. Is that just propping up one of his players, or is he actually, thinking he's going to be using them this year? We'll see. If he does play, I'm interested to see his role. I think he could be more effective than a player we were also talking about, like TJ Sanders, when we were talking off screen. I don't think he's been as effective as you would like a second-round pick to be. Is he a complete fit for this defense? Well, supposedly he was supposed to be better fit. I haven't seen it so far. We'll see. But I am excited if Dwayne Carter does make the team. He seems like a great locker room presence, like I said, great locker room guy. And when I was at the open practice on the 18th, he was running around, throwing balls to get people in the stands, signing them and throwing around. He's got a great personality, and he just seems happy to be back. You know what I mean? It's good to see players, you can tell that they appreciate it. You know what I mean? So I am rooting for him. We'll see how it goes. I think Greg Gaines might be maybe hop him on the depth chart. We'll see. I'm just very interested to add a player like him of his quality so late in the process. Normally, when you add somebody this late, it's, just a extra camp body, but I don't believe that that's the case with Gaines. And I don't necessarily believe that if you released him that he's going to want to stay on the practice squad. We'll see. Maybe that is the case. Now that's a new rule. You can have some veterans on the practice squad, but I don't know. From all accounts, from what he said, it sounds like he wants to come here and contribute. And how much does that cut into Dwayne Carter's time? Probably quite a bit, I would say. But there's going to be a heavy rotation, just as there was on Sean McDermott's defense, just a different style. You know what I mean? So we'll see. It'll definitely be interesting for sure. I hope that answered your question.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
so talk about the secondary unit, and we talked about the corners, we talked about the nickels, and how
Mhm.
do you feel where it's at that point? Because you talked about Maxwell Harrison, bit of a concern so far in
Mhm.
training camp, and he's been
Mhm.
going through injuries. But you talk about
Uh-huh.
IGB, he's kind of stepped up to a certain way. Christian Bedford's one of the best right
Mhm.
out there, right? So we can't
Yes.
complain about that.
Yep.
But the nickels has been intriguing so far, and you said it's possible that with with um with the offer, it could be a 1 year thing, and then Jordan Hancock would be the guy. But how would you see the balance of all that all together, and if it's good enough with their defense the way it's placed?
So if everybody stays healthy, which they haven't specifically in the secondary so far this summer, I think it can work. When Leonard spoke, I believe it was on Monday, he did talk about how he believes it's a bit of a concern, regardless of what Chauncey Gardner, CJ Gardner Johnson wants to say. He's admittedly a little bit concerned. Just being able to gel is different on the field than versus in the meetings. Even walkthroughs are different. Obviously, you can glean some things from that, but there's only so much you can take from a practice setting versus being on the field when it's a live setting. And when Houston's a house of horrors for Buffalo lately, so it's going to be bullets flying. No matter how bad Houston ended last season, I know that they're going to be hyped up too for sure. So it'll be interesting to see that first game. I am comfortable, like I said, if they stay healthy. I think Gardner Johnson and Bishop could be a good tag team in the back there. It'll be a little bit different than a Hyde and Poyer, obviously, but I think maybe they have a little bit more spunk. Maybe we'll see. I think Bishop could take it even another big step. It's unfortunate that he was hurt a little bit again this spring and at camp, so that's another issue. I don't know what seems to be the case with those Utah guys because Dalton Kincaid as well. Uh,
Yeah.
but that's been unfortunate. But when he's on the field, he is effective, and he is an athletic specimen, and he can be an upper echelon player in this league if he stays on the field. And I think having a player like Chauncey Gardner Johnson to be able to prop him up and give him more confidence, even just telling him that you can be the best might even help him. Confidence is a hell of a drug. So I think they could be a good duo back there. They just have to stay together and stay on the field and work at it. And then Hairston, same thing. If he stays on the field, I think he could be a quality player, but it's been all the way since college. He had an issue. I think it was a shoulder issue at Kentucky. And then last year, right in training camp, he gets hurt. And then when he does come back, he gets hurt right before the playoffs as well. So that's been unfortunate. And then this offseason, even Leonard alluded to it. Max, he said Max has been out for a lot. He specifically said that. So he knows that he needs to make up for lost time and he needs to stay on the field and they need to. Luckily, maybe it's a good thing that there's that long layoff before the game against Houston. Maybe that gives them a little bit more time. They're not going to be practicing as hard. It's not going to be like they're at training camp and pads. So maybe they might do a little bit, but I think rules won't allow that, once the regular season comes around. So um, we'll see. It's interesting. I am interested in some of the rookies like Kenai Walker. That he's been a surprise this training camp. I think it looks like he might lock down that fourth boundary cornerback spot. Originally it was thought maybe like a Trey White might come back or something like that because there wasn't that much depth. At least there was thought to be not much depth at the beginning of training camp. But he's been a pleasant surprise, and he has a connection to cornerbacks coach Jay Valai. They were together at Oklahoma before. I know Kenai Walker was with Arkansas, but he was at Oklahoma before that. So that's a connection there. That's how he landed in Buffalo. So that's been a pleasant surprise there. He's big, 6'2", over 200 pounds, similar to Davison Igbinosun. They're both bigger than Max. Maybe they can hold to the rigors of the NFL game better than he can. I don't know. Max is physically gifted in being able to be quick, twitchy, and he's fast and things like that. But I don't know. Maybe his body just for whatever reason just can't hold up. I can't say that, and I'm not saying that's going to be the case. But it's just been interesting to see how much of a struggle it's been for him so far. But if he can stay on the field, I think him and Benford could be a great duo, and I think IGB is a good backup. I don't think you necessarily want him starting, but if that has to be the case, that has to be the case. Benford started as a 6th-round pick in LA that first year when he was a rookie. He started over Kyer Elam. So, it's not the same regime, obviously, but hey, if a guy's ready to play, then a guy's ready to play. You know what I mean? So if he needs to step in and Max can't do it, then so be it. But I think they have the talent. They definitely. I like they've added a little bit of more youthfulness compared to years of the past. Hopefully, we won't be calling Jordan Poyer in from off the streets or Micah Hyde to sit on the practice squad. God forbid that. We'll see. Maybe it was Brandon Bean and not Sean McDermott, but no, I'm just saying. Who knows? But yeah, I am, and I think Leonard, being a former safety himself, I think he takes to that group, quite well, and I think he wants his hands on the whole defense, but I think he might have a special place in his heart for that group. So I expect if they stay healthy, like I said, I expect good things for them. So that'll be good to see if they can stay on the field.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about Kanai Walker, but you answered it perfectly.
Oh well, sorry, I am excited about him. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
He's had a great camp.
Yes, he has. He's been a pleasant surprise for sure.
But I want to ask you about this. Like, I look at this linebacker core, and it looks pretty solid. Just give us some insight, and your thoughts on the depth of this team and the linebacker core, because to me it looks pretty deep.
Yeah. So I am very interested to see who ends up winning the battle between Dorian Williams and Caleb Elam-Zor. Elam-Zor was the talk of the town at the start of camp. I even wrote about it. Everyone had something to say about him, and all good things. Since then, kind of cooled off a little bit, and I've noticed Dorian out there a little bit more. But we'll see. That could, even Leonard mentioned on Monday how it could maybe be a little bit of a rotation, at least to start the season, because he says neither of them have done anything to lose the job. So obviously he's been happy with how they've played so far. And then behind them, well, actually, I want to say beside them, I am a little concerned that Terrell Bernard also has another injury as of late. Obviously, it doesn't sound like it's too significant, but he's another smaller type linebacker or player. I just want to say that seems to not hold up as well for whatever reason. I mean, it's not anybody's fault that they get injured or anything, but he's definitely been through the ringer as far as the list of ailments that he's had since being in the league, especially the past couple of years. So I hope that he can stay on the field, because I think he is, as much as he is a good player, I think he's also a great leader in the middle of that defense. But Elam-Zor apparently has been quite the leader as well when he's been in there. And they've even switched on and off as being who's the Mike and who's not. So that's been a little surprising to see from the TCU rookie. He definitely seems to have the right demeanor, the right makeup. He's athletic. I believe he ran a 4.4, like a high 4.4, not like a low 4.4, obviously. But I remember he was quite fast. If not, it was 4.5. He ran quick, and he tested well at the combine. He produced well. He's actually a former defensive end from high school. That's where he started as a defensive end, and then he decided to make the switch after, because he originally was at Cal, because he's from California. And then he ended up making a switch to linebacker, did quite well in one season at Cal. And then when he switched to TCU, and last year he blew up. He was one of the best linebackers in college as far as production goes. So that'll be interesting if he can earn that job outright or not. But Dorian Williams was also a productive college linebacker at Tulane as well. They're similar athletic profiles. He was also a speedy linebacker who could run and hit, sideline to sideline. I think if he doesn't have to think as much within a defense, maybe Dorian can have quite the year. He's already had some seasons of good production under McDermott's defense, but I think at times he might have been thinking a little bit too much out there. You could see him get caught on some bootlegs and things like that, overrunning, over pursuing the play. Then behind those guys, Andreessen, for as much as people wanted to say he might not make the team, I think his special teams prowess is going to hold him onto this team, and they seem to love him. I mean, God, they mic him up for practice and all that. So I don't foresee them letting go of the hometown kid. And gosh, when he plays, man, he is productive. And I think this 3-4 defense might even be better for him, downhill. And don't think as much. And he's actually fairly good for being an undrafted player. He's got a pretty good athletic profile as well. So I think he's a quality backup as well, and then, other than that, Keontae Jenkins appears to be maybe a player that is going to finally get onto a 53-man roster. Last year, he made the practice squad, got elevated a few times. I'm actually writing a story now as he's one of those players that has a good chance of cracking the roster. I mean, if he doesn't play then this preseason game, this final one, then I would assume that means he made it. But if he's out there, he's still fighting for a job. So that would be interesting. So that's good there. Another one that I'm interested, who I don't think is going to make the team, but just as far as being a practice squad candidate, I wrote a story about him, and I actually got to talk to his inside linebackers coach, David Mackey from Tennessee Tech University, so a lower level of FCS, Theron Gaines. He actually had quite the good game against Carolina. If anyone wants to go back and watch it, he shot the gap a couple times, and he really played downhill fast. Was flying around out there, and he's been on a lot of the special teams units, and early. I'm not saying he's making the team, but they seem to want to get him involved in a lot of this. So he's a player that I think is going to stick to the practice squad. So I'd say they're probably going to keep about 5 linebackers. So the ones that I mentioned, Williams, Alarms, Bernard, and then Andreessen and Jenkins. Then we'll see about practice squad. I'm excited about Theron Gaines. He was also, like Alarms, a former defensive end in high school. And then he made the switch. He was very productive in high school in Tennessee. Murfreesboro, I believe, was the high school. And but he wasn't heavily recruited because he's a little bit smaller. He's only about 5'10", 5'11". So, those types of players are few and far between for making it edge rusher. So he decided to make the switch to linebacker. And he ended up having I believe, he was an All-American at the lower level of FCS last year and had over 90 tackles. So he's a player that I think could develop into something like an Andreessen later on. So I am pleasantly surprised with their depth there. Obviously, I think they are too. They haven't brought in a Shaq Thompson. They haven't brought in a Jermaine Pratt. Now, will they do it? I do question on whether maybe they make a roster claim or try to, at least. I know they'll be way down the waiver claim. But if somebody gets loose that maybe they like, sometimes Bean likes to snag a player or two for the bottom half of the roster. So you never know there. So I wouldn't say that Andreessen and Jenkins are totally safe. But yeah, I am pleasantly surprised with that depth, and we'll see how it goes. Totally different defense, we'll see. We'll see if up front guys like Deion Walker and stuff can keep Greg Gaines, can keep these guys clean and allowing them to do their job. Then yeah, but it takes 11 guys. That's why football is a great sport. So we'll see.
The Bills' run defense last year, they gave up like 136 yards a game and 5.1 yards a carry, which is pretty atrocious. And
yeah,
they underwent a pretty massive overhaul with personnel-wise and schematically. So, do you feel like this run defense can be improved, and what are some ways that they can, attack that and try to neutralize the run game with this personnel?
Yeah. So they've even talked about it all offseason. Leonard said that's going to be, it's all speak, right? It's all coach speak because Sean McDermott, how often did he say priority is up front, priority is in the trenches, priority is stopping the run, right? Even though his scheme didn't necessarily allow that to be the case. But I do think having the 3-4, having 5 guys up on the line with your outside linebackers and then your 3 linemen, that allows for one-on-one matchups for everybody. You can't, you know what I mean? If you can win your one-on-one matches up front and then also hold at the point of attack and allow, like I said, just mentioned it before, allow these linebackers to shoot these gaps, to play downhill and do what they need to do, then yes, I believe that they can be effective and see. Now, how much of a dramatic change will it be? I do not know, but I do believe that maybe we could be top half of the league. as far as seeing, the team could be top half of the league to start, and maybe go from there. As much as we want to say there's been a lot of changes, you see around the league every year how many coaching changes happen around. There's 3 or 4 every year. Jacksonville sticks out in my mind with their defense, how quickly they turned it around. And, they were last season, how often did they talk about how that defense was flying around and playing tough? So maybe this year for Buffalo can be that type of defense. See the switch turned on specifically in the run defense. And, it's all a mentality too. And that's something that McDermott used to say. So like I said, it is coach speak, but it is true. It's a mentality of you beating the man in front of you, you holding the point of attack. And, like I said, having those 5 guys up on the line instead of having a 4-3 and just having the 4 down linemen, I think that will help. I think Deion Walker is taking a step towards also being a great run defender. As being as big as he is, it isn't necessarily a strength of his game, or at least it wasn't in college. But I think so far through that one game, he was beating his man. He was making plays behind the line of scrimmage, not just in the passing game. And having that big of a body allows other guys to, he takes up a lot of space. So that allows other guys to also, like, hopefully Ed Oliver to not get swallowed up by double teams. Hopefully Landon Jackson bulking up to 280, he can hold up more in the run game specifically. And I think he's done well. He even had a tackle for loss that sticks out of my head against the Browns. Being able to beat his man, shed the block, and do what you're supposed to do and not get held up. So that is the things that you can do is, also lining guys up in different spots, not allowing the offensive lineman to get used to the guy that's in front of them for 50, 60 snaps a game. Switching it up, rotating along the line. They've talked about that too for pass rush, but it also works for run defense as well. If you're switching around where you're lining up, that guy's not used to the moves that you're making or what you're setting him up for, not just in the pass game, but in the run game as well. So, and Greg Russo, I know it's a new defense, but he's also been a great run defender. So I think that will continue. And I think Bradley Chubb, for as much as they brought him in to be a pass rusher, he's a complete player as well. So I think he's even a better run defender than probably a Joey Bosa, at least at that point of his career. I'm not saying that he wasn't always good. And he actually played fairly well, but how many times did fans probably get a little perturbed when he was out of place in the run game and over pursuing, trying to chase those sacks? If you don't do that, don't chase. Dorian Williams had a quote the other day. Don't chase the play, let it kind of come to you. Then you are not going to make as many mistakes. So if they can just play sound and play to their roles and what they're supposed to be doing within this defense and what Leonard wants them to do, then I believe he's going to put them in the right positions to be successful. Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit on the offensive perspective. And DJ Moore was a big acquisition for the Bills. It was a need. It was a must. And we look at the wide receiver situation the last couple of years, ever since they traded Diggs, and they didn't have a true wide receiver one, and they finally have one. And how important is it going to impact the offense? Because he's going to be the focal point with Josh Allen, having a connection with them. And
yes.
And how big of a deal is it to have a guy like DJ Moore with the Bills?
I believe it's going to be great as long as he can stay healthy as well. I know he's been very durable in his career, but man, I'm sure some fans probably held their breath a little bit when he had that scare against Carolina. I know I certainly was holding my breath a little bit when he grabbed at the back of his ankle there. Who the heck knows? We don't need another Achilles injury. But he seems to be fine, even though they are taking it quite easy, I think, since then. But there's no rush to he's been practicing, but I think they've been taking it a little bit easy, as they have been with a lot of these guys. If he can stay on the field, I believe he's going to be way more productive than some people were trying to give him credit for coming from Chicago. I just don't think that him and Caleb Williams had a good connection. And for as people want to knock that is a huge thing for a quarterback wide receiver thing. If you can have a good connection with a guy, it can make up for a lot of things on the field. If you guys can just kind of speak an unhidden, a secret language out there, words don't need to be said. A lot can be, a lot can be, a lot can be said for that. You know what I mean? So
Ah,
I think he's going to be a lot more productive, possibly even 1,000 yards. I am thinking I could see maybe 6, 7 touchdowns, something like that. But most importantly, I think he's going to be a player that Josh is going to look to in some critical situations. And I think DJ is going to be able to separate in those situations. And even when he doesn't separate, I think he's going to be able to make those catches that maybe Stephon Diggs didn't make towards the end of his tenure there. I can think of the Cincinnati game, the playoff game specifically, right here, hit him right in the hands, and Josh trusted him. Did he make the play? No. But how many times did Caleb Williams somehow still trusted DJ to make the play, and he came down with it, specifically against the Packers? You know what I mean? So I think he's still that type of player, and I think he has the mindset of he's out to prove that he's still that guy. He's still young. He's the same draft class as Josh. I think he's still kind of in that prime-ish range. I think he's got maybe 2 or 3 years left of being a top guy. I know he can be Buffalo's number one, and I think he's going to open things a lot up for other guys like Keon Coleman specifically. You saw that in the Carolina game. Unfortunately, he also had an injury. Khalil Shakir in that Carolina game. Guys were getting open, and Joshua Palmer, he's been actually maybe these injuries have been a good thing, a blessing in disguise for him, because he's been picking things up in practice a little bit, and Josh has had to find him in those situations because he has nobody else to throw the ball to. Not saying that nobody's getting open, but as far as starters, there's not that many guys out there that he's going to be playing with on a regular basis. So he's forced to throw the ball to Joshua Palmer more, and we've seen some positive returns from that in practice as of late. So if those top 4 guys, and then you got Skylar Bell, if those guys, if he can get on the field and stay healthy, I hope he plays against the Steelers and gets his feet wet a little bit. I know it won't be with Josh Allen, but he needs to at least see some NFL game action, even though if it's preseason. He needs to see that before Houston, I think. But I think DJ can open up a lot of things for these other guys as well, and he just seems like a leader. You know what I mean? So I am excited to see it come to fruition, because so far so good. I believe he had 3 catches for like 61 yards, a game high in that Carolina game, and who the heck knows if he would have played a full game, what that would have looked like. So I think he's going to surprise a lot of people and probably silence a lot of doubters if he can stay healthy, as a lot of these guys. It's going to be critical. So.
well, let's talk about the tight end situation here. And Dalton Kincaid is a free agent after this year, and he's playing for a contract, and he's such an important part of this team. And health has been a concern. Dawson Knox has been I think he's a free agent too after 27. I could be wrong. He has another year left. And then
I know
the
that
guy,
restructured it, yeah.
probably we did, yeah. And then there's another guy I think he needs to get talked about more is Spencer Hawes. Talk about the tight end situation. How big Kincaid could be with this offense provided, and how important are those tight ends as they combined together with their needs of sharehold of getting their fair share.
Yes. So if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember the exact knee injury. It was like a PCL or something that Dalton's been just kind of, he's not been getting it surgically repaired. He's kind of just been rehabbing it and such from the advice of doctors. So whatever, I can't fault him there. But you'd think if injury's been bothering you for a couple seasons that maybe you might want to just get it fixed and not worry about it. But hopefully, he's got his rehab or prehab situation figured out, and that won't be a hindrance this year. But like you said, with the emergence of Jackson Haas, maybe he doesn't need to play as many snaps. Maybe they can pick and choose on when he's going to be out there. Not saying being a tell or anything like that, because I think he's actually improved as a blocker, Kincaid, that is. But he's always had a good connection with Josh from my perspective. It's just been a matter of consistency of staying on the field and being able to build that rapport more and more. Because how many times have we seen it, specifically when he was a rookie? I mean, he was throwing him the ball quite a bit, and there were some games where he was getting 6 or 7 targets, a game, and 5 or 6 catches, and he's that type of player. It's just sometimes he'll fade away, and I think it's mostly because of his injuries that he's not as effective as he can be. And I think it's been very frustrating because, I mean, how often have we said, oh, try to save him for January? Well, how about just having him be healthy for a full year and not? I mean, I know everybody has their bumps and bruises throughout the year, but the maintenance has just been kind of a headache, in my opinion. First round pick, yes, he has the talent and he's been far more productive than, a Keon Coleman through his first 2 seasons, but health has just been such a concern that it's you can't really trust it. So thank goodness for Dawson Knox and his reliability and his tough nose, mentality. I'm not saying that, Dalton's not tough nose. I'm just saying Dawson seems to always be out there when he can and fighting through things. And he's a true pro's pro. So they're lucky to have him as the backup tight end. They got one of the best tight end rooms in the league, in my opinion. And I think they'll use him a little bit more. And like I said, I think Jackson Haas might surprise a little bit. And even like guys like Shane Zylstra and Kaleki Latu have been great as far as backup guys. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
they have a great depth at some of these positions. And I think as long as the health is the major thing, but it'd be fun to see. I know this offense has the guys to really continue what they've done in the past couple of years. So.
The Bills hired Pete Carmichael Jr. as their offensive coordinator, coming over from. He's actually been in the league for about 25 years, right? And with the Saints, won a Super Bowl there, has loads of experience. I mean, although Drew Brees probably had a lot to do with that, but I think it's 10 straight years of top 10 offenses he had, or 14 straight. So, but looking at bringing him in and some of the how do you feel like with Joe Brady calling the plays? How do you see that working out with, but like his role with regards to Brady and this offense as a whole?
Yeah, so like you said, he has loads of experience. Not a ton of play calling experience per se. It's been a lot of Sean Payton. But like we were talking off screen, I think Carmichael's kind of comfortable in that second in command kind of role. Not saying he likes to take a back seat, but he seems to be good at observing things from afar and then giving his input to the guys that are actually calling the plays on game day. And I think that's why Joe Brady brought him in and was fortunate enough to be able to bring him in, because he has loads of experience, just not loads of experience calling plays. But luckily enough, he's not going to be asked to do that. And another thing that I wrote an article way back in June about was his influence of adding the screen game with running backs and getting them more involved, not just the screen game either, but just the passing game as a whole. And how James Cook, coming out of college in Georgia, he was a player that was thought to be his skill set, right? A pass catching running back. And lo and behold, he can be a bell cow, which is great. Awesome. I just still think there's more that can be taken from that part of his game, and it hasn't been. Instead, we rely on maybe a Ty Johnson on third down because he can be a good pass blocker, but he's been out for 2 weeks too. So that team, the team is relying on other guys on third down instead of having Cook out there to be also a pass catching option on those plays as well. And I think Ray Davis could actually be utilized in that more as well. But the point I was making with Carmichael and the running backs is when he was with the Saints, there was, he had great running backs like, Alvin Kamara, Darren Sproles, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, even going way back when he was actually good Reggie, you know what I mean? USC Reggie. And those 3 guys, Kamara, Reggie Bush, and Sproles, each had at least one season, but they had, for my article, I said at least one of like 72 receptions or more, but they at least had like 2 or 3 seasons of like 65 receptions or more under Carmichael. And that's quite impressive, and we haven't really seen anything like that. I know Ty Johnson, maybe it's been because it's been a little bit more spread out with who's been on the field, but I think we could see a little bit more impact there, and I am interested to see that. And I'm also interested to see, is he going to be up in the booth, which I think personally, I think that's where Carmichael should be. I don't think Brady necessarily needs him in his ear down on the field, but I think being able to see things from an aerial view and maybe a little bit different perspective and kind of taken away from the emotion of it all, which I think actually maybe Carmichael's good at that anyways, just from hearing him speak. He seems like a pretty reserved type of guy who maybe doesn't get totally riled up all the time. So I'm interested to see if he'll be up in the booth and be able to offer his kind of point of view from there, and then be able to be in his ear there instead of being down on the field seeing the same exact thing that Joe's seeing. I think he does have a lot of knowledge to give him, and I think that's why Joe obviously brought him in, as they were together during their time at New Orleans when I think it was like 2017, 2018 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that's why he brought him in, and not to call the shots, but to be able to offer his, expertise in certain areas, specifically probably running game, or, even running game a little bit, but also, getting the running backs involved in the passing game. And so it'll be interesting to see how much of a spin there is, versus what Brady has done in the past. Hopefully there's not as many wide receiver screens. We'll see though.
Let's talk about the O-line. Probably one of the top O-lines in the sport. Yes, they did lose Davis Edwards. He got paid handsomely by the Saints. Now you see, and McGovern just got extended, but he's been injured during training camp.
Yes, unfortunately.
But,
quite the theme, huh?
And then you got Alec Anderson is the starting left guard. That was reported yesterday. And Osiris Torrance got extended. And more importantly, how do you look at this O-line now with this team? Because O-line's been a big deal, but like if you remember when the game last year against the Texans, and we're going to get to the whole schedule thing pretty soon, but like, is it better than last year, or is it still the continuity of they're still a top O-line team, but could it be better this year?
Okay, I don't know if it's going to be better because, like you said, David Edwards got paid, and he got paid for a reason. He was quite the technician, and he was also one of the smartest guys on that offensive line, and he might have actually been the smartest guy on the offensive line, which I think prior to him, Mitch Morse might have had that role. But then when they lost him, and then they had David Edwards switch over to left guard and Connor slide into center, they didn't really lose a beat, you know what I mean? And well, I'm interested to see Alec Anderson take on that role full time. I did predict him to win that job for as much experience as Austin Corbett has. I just believe that Anderson's been the guy in mind the entire offseason. I think they like his mentality. An undrafted guy, I think they kind of like his spunk. I don't think he's the most technical, maybe still at this point of his career, but he'll definitely bang in there, and he'll give it all he's got. So I think they're going to ride with that and see if he can kind of, clear some things out with his play overall, and as he progresses throughout the season. So I think he's definitely a type of player that you could run behind. He's going to give it all he's got. He's going to lean into the guys, and so it'll be interesting to see, though, because like I said, Edwards was a guy that could set things on the line, help McGovern see things. Is Anderson that type of player? I don't know. Was that needed? I don't know. I also question how well Josh Allen, for as good as he is, I do question a little bit how good he is at setting blitz protections and things. And I think admittedly, he might say that that's an area that he might need to work on a little bit more. And as he gets older and not able to rely on his athletic ability, he's going to need to be better at setting protections and not getting fooled by things. Because he's not going to be able to run forever. I'm not saying that he's not able to do these things, but I do think it's an area that he needs to improve. And so he needs to be able to help his O-line in that way too. Osiris Torrance, it's not always just on them. It's on him being able to direct things too and being able to point things out. Because I think they are a better run blocking team than a pass blocking team still. Osiris Torrance, for as good as he is, and which was reflected by, I think he's now like the 7th highest paid guard or something like that. He's still a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. And he, for a big body, he does have some good feet, and that's why he was a second round pick, right, out of Florida. But it's not his strength. Spencer Brown, for as athletic as he is, I still think he would prefer to run block than pass block. We saw against Carolina, he got beat a couple times. For as big as he is, sometimes it's hard to stay low, and guys can dip underneath him. So for as athletic and gifted as he is, that's still a problem at times there too. And Dion, admittedly this year he decided to lose some weight and in hopes that makes him more effective and more light on his feet. And we'll see how that goes. Like I said, they still haven't had a ton of time together, and Josh was still running around a little bit during that Carolina preseason game. So it's not like it was all, sunshine and rainbows and butterflies, but it was good. I mean, yes, but there's still things that need to be cleaned up. So it's just they're a good group. I would say more of a top 15 than maybe a top 10. Can they change that? Yes. And there's a reason why James Cook was the rushing title holder last year, but it's a give and take in terms of pass protection. So we'll see how they do this year. And I kind of feel like Josh is going to take it upon himself a little bit to be a little bit more in command this year, and just because of everything that's happened since that January game in Denver, where he admittedly wasn't perfect either. So it wasn't all on the defense. So yeah, I think they're a good group, but like I said, I would say maybe like a top 15 group versus not a top 10, but like they can make that leap. And I hope that Osiris Torrance continues to progress, because I was happy. Small town guy. He comes from a town with only like 600 people in Louisiana. I think Buffalo was the perfect fit. Orchard Park, not relatively speaking, one of the smaller the cities in the NFL. I think it's a perfect fit for him in that terms, and just he's been pretty much a seamless fit. As soon as he's been drafted, he stepped right in and hasn't missed a beat. He's a top player. He just needs to maybe improve his pass protection a little bit, but if you hear him talk, he's a player that is constantly working on those things and constantly trying to improve his game, which is why I believe Buffalo decided to give him the contract, regardless of if people thought it was maybe a little bit exorbitant or too much invested into the offensive line. I think he's a player, the type of mentality that you don't want to let go. So after seeing David Edwards go, you lock up the younger guy. And maybe that's why they didn't sign David Edwards, is because they had this in mind all along. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. I'm hoping that, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe Josh Allen may have took the most sacks that he's ever taken, or recently last year. So hopefully that improves, and we'll see. It's definitely going to be interesting, as is everything. But Alec Anderson being left guard is going to be definitely a hot topic of discussion if he doesn't start out hot, specifically against Houston, because that defensive line is no joke. So we'll see.
Absolutely.
Yep.
This next question is it's kind of like a two-part question. First of all, are there any concerns around Tyler Bass with the guy? He didn't play much last season, and he, if at all, and he
not at all
showed some inconsistencies, like coming into like training camp and stuff. And then the other one is an interesting battle because it's the punter battle, because we drafted a punter in the 7th round, and apparently it's a close knit tight conflict, what they're saying. So just talk about those two battles. And I know we talked about a lot of players on this episode, but if there's anybody else we missed that you feel like could be a contributor this season.
So with Bass, I do have a lot of love for Bass. I've always liked him since they drafted him out of Georgia Southern. Kind of a bit of a raw kicker, if you could be a raw kicker. If you hear his backstory, kicking in high school with his Mima or Mama, or whatever he said for his grandma, was one that got him into kicking. And so I kind of just like that backstory, so I always root for an underdog. And then coming from a smaller school like Georgia Southern, after a solid Senior Bowl performance, and then he was for a few seasons one of the top kickers in the league, and that's why the Bills decided to sign him to a contract extension. But for whatever reason, a multitude of reasons, confidence issues, injuries that pile up, and certain nagging injuries that we probably don't hear about throughout the season that can affect somebody's game too. You know what I mean? Um, so there's definitely some concern. I mean, luckily he snuck in that 52-yarder against the Browns. Kind of did a little bit of I don't know if a slice or a hook or however you want to call it. And 4 for 4 on his extra points, but that one against Carolina, I mean, it didn't even at all. There was no hook to it or whatsoever. It just went straight wide right. And God, we don't want to hear wide right, do we? And it was the same length, a distance that he missed a couple years ago during that divisional round against the Chiefs at home. Wide right, I believe it was like 42 or 44 yards, something like that, and he missed it. So I'm sure that type of stuff sticks in his head still, because I can't imagine being a professional kicker. It's one of the most pressure cooked outside of quarterback. It is one of the most pressure cooked positions, because all eyes are on you in that moment, and you're going to make or break a season sometimes. And gosh, the guys on the team that are all these athletes, they can't do that. They're not, for the most part, they can't be a kicker. You know what I mean? So it is a unique position to be put in. I am interested about Jeff Rodgers having the connection with Matt Prater. Matt Prater being a former Arizona Cardinal, they did have a connection, so I'm sure he's on speed dial. Do we see like a random Matt Prater's a veteran practice squad edition, and where he just hangs out? And I could see that happening, to be honest, and not necessarily being, hey, Tyler, you better, but more. Tyler Bass talked about how much he took from Matt Prater last year and how much he learned. So maybe Matt would be cool with sitting on the, just kicking during practice and hopefully not have to kick. But would they want to waste a spot on a kicker? I doubt it. So it is a concern, but from all accounts, it seems like they're going to roll with it. I mean, they've brought nobody in at all. And they've kind of just said they're going to let him work through his struggles. So how long do they allow that to happen? Especially do we see him miss 1 or 2 against Houston? I mean, we don't want that to happen, but if that does happen, then that's going to cause a lot of controversy. You know what I mean? So that could be a position that gets changed quickly. And it is a position that gets, tossed around in the league a lot. I mean, not everybody has a kicker that has been around for 4 or 5 seasons. I mean, it is like I said, it is an interesting position in the league. It's a pressure cooked position. There's not a lot of thanks given to it, even if, it's pretty much mostly a thankless job. So I'm rooting for Tyler Bass, but I am not, I'm not going to hold my breath that he's going to, be a great kicker again. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, he had quite the injury issues with his pelvic and groin and all of that. There was a multitude of things that caused him to have sports hernia surgery. So we'll see how it goes there. And then you go to punter, the guy that's going to be holding for Tyler Bass, and the guys that have been switching on and off, Tommy Doman Jr. and Mitch Wishnowsky. I would hope that they would just give it to Tommy Doman Jr. because from my eyes, it at least seems even. So I would give it to the young guy versus the old veteran who they just signed to a 1-year deal. I mean, why would you want to waste that? And honestly, historically, I can't remember, but I believe it was like in the 20s or something, a number of specialists drafted since 2010 or something like that. And the only player that had gotten cut was Matt Ariza. Obviously, that was that was obviously a special circumstance, and that was also a horrible situation all around for everybody involved. And he was luckily cleared of everything, but still was an awful situation. But he was going to win that job. He had been named pretty much the starting punter before that all came out, and then as soon as he had got announced as a starter, that news came out and he was cut. Now he's kicking for the Kansas City Chiefs, has been for a couple of years. So I expect Doman Jr. to win that job, but I do find it a little bit curious that Wishnowsky keeps getting trotted out there. They even split a little bit of time against Cleveland. He held for all of Tyler Bass's kicks, I believe, and then Doman Jr. and him split time punting. I think they need to make that decision soon, but I guess they're going to take it right to the wire and give them this game to see, because they didn't even get to kick during the Carolina game. So I guess that's what they're waiting for, but I do hope at least from a roster construction piece, that they would go with a young guy versus an older guy, because I would think Tommy Doman Jr., who was a pretty phenomenal punter in college at both Michigan and Florida, he would get claimed. There's no way he would make it. So we'll see how it goes. I would think that he wins the job, but like every other area on this team, it's definitely interesting what will develop. And then you said, as far as any players that I think we're not talking about enough. Oh man, well, I am interested. I am interested about Fedarian Mathis and his suspension, because he was playing pretty well actually before that got, and that's actually from something when he was with the Jets still, I believe, and it's just kind of getting cleared out now. So I'm wondering if they knew about this all along, and then that kind of played in with this Greg Gaines addition, and they kind of had it in the fold, and it just kind of came to fruition now. He's a player I'm interested to see if they keep around after his suspension, because Leonard talked about how when he took the job, he was a player that kind of an underlying player that stood out to him. You know what I mean? And he's a former second-round pick out of Alabama. I think this defense would fit him quite well. He's pretty good size, 6'4", 312, I want to say. So that's one player that I am interested after he comes back from suspension. And it seems like the Bills are okay with allowing guys to come back from suspension.
Right.
And you know what I mean? So we'll see there. On offense, he's not necessarily an underlying guy, but Skylar Bell, I am interested to see how he takes to the NFL game. He's hardly played much this. I believe he said he had a groin, and this spring he also had a hamstring. So is he going to be hampered by injuries all year, or is he going to actually be able to get into a groove and become a quality contributor this season? That's to be determined. I think they need it. I think they need as many bodies as they can in that department. We don't need obviously he's injured, but we don't need a Gabe Davis addition late in the year or coming off the practice squad. You know what I mean? We don't need those type of things. The team doesn't need that. I know fans don't want to see that. So I'll be interested to see Skylar Bell. You already kind of mentioned Jackson Haas, but I am interested to see if he can kind of take there, because he seems to be having a great camp.
Yeah.
And we already touched on it, but Landon Jackson, I am interested in Landon. Bulking up to 280 and seemingly taking a hold of that starting job was quite a surprise to me. I thought it was going to be TJ Sanders. So he's been a disappointment, TJ, but Landon's been one that I am surprised to see how if he can stay on the field, how much of a contributor can he be? Can he be a quality? I mean, he's a third-round pick. He was quite a high draft pick. That's a guy that you probably had plans of being a starter down the road. You know what I mean? So we'll see if that comes to fruition. We already talked about Kenai Walker. I am a little bit interested about Corey Couch. I like him better than DeMar Hamlin and Geno Stone, to be honest. And he did make a play against Cleveland that was quite impressive off Deshaun Watson. He had that interception. But I don't think he'll make the team. But he's been around on the practice squad for a couple of years. And he is very versatile, similar to a Jordan Hancock. So I think he's a guy that maybe we need to watch in this final preseason game at least and see if he can maybe push off a DeMar and push off a Geno Stone, who I don't think makes the team anyways. But DeMar's on the fringe, but he's also on a one-year deal. He's a little bit older. I believe he's 28 now. Corey Couch was great at the University of Miami in college. He was a productive defensive back. He's versatile. So I think maybe he's a guy that maybe you want to add on the back end of your roster, along with like a rookie Jalen Kilgore, who I think eventually will develop into something. I put out a Bills big board this draft cycle of 108 players, and he was like 24, one of the top players, him and Skylar Bell. I also had Davis Benosin and Caleb Elam-Zor on that list. So all four of those rookies are guys that could be big contributors this year. I think they're going to be counting on a lot of young guys. But I think like you said, we've touched on a lot of guys, so I don't think there's too many guys that are underlying that we haven't touched on that will be big contributors, but those are just a couple that I do have my eye on.
Yes. Let's dive into the schedule a little bit. there's 6 primetime games.
Mhm.
Uh, you got a Thanksgiving game, which is one of those prime times. You got a Christmas game. It's
Mhm.
just a gauntlet that this
Yeah.
team faces this year. It's brutal. So, give us your thoughts on the schedule, the upcoming schedule for this season.
Yeah, like you said, it is quite a gauntlet, specifically right to start things off. Houston to start week one down in Houston. I think that was, although I think maybe it is the best case scenario for catching them because you'll be able to hide some things, obviously, from the preseason, and you'll have some things that you want to bring out for week one, as there always is around the league. But it's been a house of horrors for Josh Allen. He's never won down there. And at times it's been not to his any fault of his own, but at times he has got a little, flustered. And I'm not saying that's going to be the case now, but sometimes there's just something to a venue, to a player, and it would be nice for him to avenge that. And then you got the opener against Detroit. I know they've had kind of a interesting offseason with Terrion Arnold being cut and possibly suspended for the robbery or whatever that was. And then I think it was their starting center, Cade Mays. He also got injured, and he'll be out to start the season. So they've had a bit of a rough go there. So will they be top at their top notch speed for the week 2 matchup? Probably not. So maybe that's a good thing for Buffalo there too. So maybe it's not as a tough opener, home opener. I don't expect them to lose that first game. I would hope they wouldn't lose that first game at the new Highmark Stadium, but you never know, I guess. And some crazy things happen sometimes. And then what you got the Patriots early on too, week 4, I believe it is, and it's kind of a strange thing where I think after Houston they have like 3 straight home games if I'm not mistaken. So that's a little bit weird. So having 3 straight home games, hopefully they can capitalize on that because they'll need to if they're not going to have as many towards the end of the season. Um, uh, Denver on Christmas, that's going to be quite the show. And I don't know if you guys saw the jersey release and the helmet. It's going to be the red helmet and with the white
Yes, I did. We did see
jersey.
that. Yeah.
So that'll be pretty
Yeah.
cool. I think that'll be nice on Christmas. Hopefully, maybe we'll get some snow, and hopefully they can correct the wrongs of the past against Denver from last season.
Sure.
Uh, Overall, it is a tough schedule, but I know the Bills are favored to win the AFC East from certain avenues, outlets, um, which is kind of a little bit surprise to me. But I think we all saw the type of schedule that, on the flip side, that the Patriots had last season. It was one of the more historically easy schedules ever, and obviously they were able to take that to top in the AFC East and then somehow skirt their way to the Super Bowl, even though Drake May played horrible and kind of just rode the coattails of his defense. Um, so we'll see. It is definitely interesting. I don't really think the Bills need to worry about, the Dolphins or the Jets. Maybe they'll surprise. I don't know, but I think it's going to be a 2-team race for the AFC East. And so I think as far as it being a tough schedule, well, the Patriots are going to be in a similar boat. So hopefully we don't have a situation where we're like it's the NFC North or NFC South, I want to say, where it's an 8 and 9 situation getting into the playoffs. I don't foresee that happening, but I can see maybe 10 and 7, 11 and 6. Not crazy like 13 and 3. That would be awesome. But like I said, there's a lot of things that they still need to work through. And like Jim Leonard alluded to in his press conference on Monday, they have not had a lot of time on that side of the ball to gel as in terms of actual game reps. So will they come out hot or will it be a little bit of a slow go on defense? And if that's the case, then well, obviously the offense is going to have to compensate a little bit. Well, they've done that in the past, but will they be able to continue that? Who knows? I mean, we'll see. Hopefully, Brady's got a few more things up his sleeve. I mean, people want to say that McDermott was handcuffing him. I don't know how much I actually buy that, but that's what they want to say. So we'll see how that goes. And like I said, I think maybe a 10 and 7, 11 and 6. But I think that would be good enough to win the AFC East and maybe get like a 3 seed or something like that, which wouldn't be all that bad. So I'm definitely excited to see how things unfold here in a few weeks. I think it's important that the Bills do get off to a hot start, even if it is a tough gauntlet to start. Because, like I said, having 3 home games early on, you need to capitalize on those things because home games are precious in this NFL. Road games it's hard to win in the NFL, and it's even harder to win on the road. So they need to be able to protect their new home, their new $2.2 billion home. If they could, get a winning, maybe definitely a winning record at home, that's going to help, and then go from there. But that's going to be important to be able to maybe go 3 and at least 3-2, but hopefully, something along those lines, maybe 4-1, but we'll see. It's definitely going to be important, but we'll see how the other teams, we'll see how the Patriots start out because they just traded Butte to the Texans, so that was an interesting development too. So how quickly does May and AJ Brown, how quickly do they develop their rapport, and does the happenings of the offseason have any repercussions for the Patriots to start the season? So we'll see. It's definitely not going to be easy, but I think they can definitely reclaim the status as the top dog in the AFC East.
Well, we appreciate having you on, John.
Yeah,
being a
thank you so
first-time
much.
guy. I think it'll be a very interesting. I think the AFC is always competitive, no matter what.
Yeah,
Like you
100%.
said, the Patriots are going to have a much tougher schedule, tougher situation. Let's see what's going to be the tabloids about affection with Mike Vrabel and his incidents during the offseason. But where can we find you in social media and everywhere else?
Yeah. All right. So you guys can find me on Twitter, and it's at jgreen_PR Sports. It's from my prior time as a newspaper reporter. And then you can also find me on Blue Sky. So on X, it is at jgreen_PR Sports. And then for Blue Sky, it is at billsmafia30.bluesky.social. So that's where you can find me. And then I also, in addition to writing for Bills on SI, I do have my own publication for Bills News. It is called Believe in Buffalo, and it's over on medium.com. It's free. I know there is an option. Maybe this is why people get scared off when you do go to Medium. It does say prompt you to pay, but if you just look down at the bottom, it says free. So there is a free option, and all of my articles are free over there. And I also, every Sunday, I put out, it's called the Bills Blizzard. It's over there, and it contains all of my articles from the past week at Bills on SI, as well as anything that I write for Believe in Buffalo. And I package them all into this little article that I put out every Sunday. I add a little bit of a personal touch on maybe what's happened in my life through the past week, as well as what's happened in Bills Mafia world, as I'm kind of knee deep in it 24/7. So I put out a little article there. If you don't catch my articles throughout the week on any of those social platforms, I'll definitely put that out on Sundays. And it's a nice little read. Usually I put it out in the morning, but at least by early evening, so people can kind of catch up on the news from the past week. I would hope that people can start maybe giving that a little more traction, because I do put a lot of time into that, to be able to, on top of write everything during the week, to be able to bundle them all up into that nice package for people to click on that link, and then it contains all the links from all those articles. And I usually have at least one article a week for Bills on SI, and as well as probably a couple over on Medium throughout the week. So I think people are maybe missing out a little bit on what I provide. So I hope maybe they can kind of come check it out, because I do put a lot of effort into it, and I think I put as much work into it as all the other guys. So I really do hope that Bills Mafia will give my work a chance, and I'm all for interacting on social media. I prefer to have a nice interaction versus some people who maybe like some other things. So I'm friendly, but so we'll see. But we'll keep that. I know we talked off screen about that, but I'm not about sensationalism. I would just give you the truth, and I'd like to talk ball, and I put out a lot of stuff every week, and it has gained traction. I appreciate all my supporters that have started looking at my stuff and giving it a chance, but I think I'd like to see it grow even more. So like I said, at jgreen_PR Sports for X, and Bills Mafia 30 at Blue Sky, I believe. You can go back and see what I said. And then also Believe in Buffalo over on medium.com, and it's free to sign up. And then any article that I put out will get emailed right to you. You can get that. So I think it's a neat little thing that people might be missing out on. And I think Bills Mafia might enjoy it. So like I said, I appreciate you guys greatly for having me on. It's been fun. I love talking ball. So.
Oh, we loved having you, man. Anytime you want to come back, you're always welcome. So
Hey,
appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Hey, no problem. And I'd love to come back anytime. So just let me know, and I'd be happy to hop on.
We will place a description below where you can find John Green and his fine work on Bills on SI and his other work. Till next time, take care. Be kind to each other. Signing off from the Sports Avenue Twitter podcast on Wednesday, August 26, 2026. And go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Buffalo.
Sports Avenue Twisted Podcast. Rob and Rocky talks everything sports.